Dear participants, good morning. I would like to greet all of you and welcome to the fourth and the last day of Vienna Migration Conference. Another valuable days ahead of us. It's full of good discussions, inspiring discussions. Today, I would like to also particularly thank you for your interest to join us in this important focus session where we will be discussing EU and Turkey migration cooperation. In particular, we will be giving you information about migration situation in Turkey and also existing cooperation frameworks. And the panel also will be a good opportunity to get insights from our distinguished panelists on the ongoing cooperation, as well as their views on potential way ahead when it comes to extending scope and manner of cooperation when it comes to migration matters between EU and Turkey. It's also technically an important session because yesterday we have focused on an internal dimension of migration management in the European Union. And today, through the last session that we will have in the afternoon, we will be discussing the external dimension aspects. Turkey as a bridge between EU and also East is also, of course, playing a kind of bridge role when it comes to migration management, not only in Turkey, but throughout the Eastern Mediterranean route. Therefore, this session is particularly important to highlight once again the importance of EU and Turkey migration cooperation with an aim to contribute discussion how to make this cooperation sustainable in a longer run. Dear colleagues, my name is Tamer. I am the regional coordinator of ICMPD, responsible to coordinate the work of ICMPD in Turkey and Western Balkans, and I am joining the conference from ICMPD Ankara office. I have the pleasure to announce that I have two distinguished guests today who will be joining us from Brussels and Ankara. Let me briefly introduce them to you. I have Miss Myriam Ferran joining us from Brussels. She is the Director of Strategy and Turkey at the Directorate-General of Enlargement and Neighbourhood. And I have also Mr. Halil Afşarata, who is joining us from Ankara. He is the Chief Foreign Advisor of the Vice President of Turkey, and he is also Chief Coordinator of the Facility for Refugees in Turkey. Without further extending my introduction, I would like to start the panel. But before, I want to invite all of you to also follow up our session through joining the conversation in our social media accounts, #ViennaMigConf. I will be asking questions to our distinguished panelists in three rounds. In the first round, we will be talking about the basic information about migration situation in Turkey and cooperation framework. And then in the second part, we will be discussing the assessment, how the cooperation is working. Of course, we will not conclude the panel without discussing the way ahead. Hopefully, it will be a fruitful discussion, not only get information, but also to take a note for all of us, while also to be guided while doing our work. Mr. Afşarata, once again, welcome, and thank you for being with us today. In recent years, the number of migrants, refugees, as well as Syrians who are under temporary protection in Turkey have been increasing. And of course, needs based on that also increasing. There is an important level of pressure over the migration authorities in Turkey, as well as over public. And the COVID situation, of course, made this also quite complicated. But in spite of all this, Turkey has been doing quite good work, and we should all appreciate what has been done by Turkey. And the work done by Turkey in cooperation with EU, as well as other countries, but also through using its own resources, have given quite good results when it comes to migration management in Turkey, but also meeting the immediate needs of the migrants and refugees in Turkey. Will it be possible for us, for you to give us some general overview about the migration situation in the country, to use this as a kind of baseline for our discussion? Thank you once again for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Kilic, and good morning you and also Mrs. Ferran from Brussels, who is our good colleague on the migration issue. We have regular meetings, and also I'm happy to share this platform with Mrs. Ferran on migration issues. Having said that, of course, I'd like to start my speech by thanking ICMPD for organizing this such an important event, given the current situation of migrants all over the world. Quite timely approach. Having said that, Mr. Kilic, we all know that Turkey has been coping with the effects of Syrian crisis since 2011. So actually, nearly it has been 10 years. It's not, of course, it's not a small time. And again, Turkey remains as the largest refugee hosting country in the world for 6 years. And we are sheltering 4 million externally displaced people, including 3.6 million Syrians fled from the conflict in Syria. And at the same time, Mr. Kilic, we continue to tackle with the irregular migratory flows towards our territories. Only last year, 455,000 irregular migrants were apprehended in our territories. And despite the restrictions on mobility due to pandemic, this year alone, number exceeded 100,000. And we have managed to reduce these irregular crossings in Aegean as well as towards Europe by 92%, nearly 100% compared to 2015. And if Turkey didn't make tremendous efforts to counter these irregular migratory flows, undoubtedly, EU would be struggling with another migration crisis. However, by doing so, our migratory burden has, of course, significantly increased. But I'd like to state that Turkey shouldn't be thought as of the shield of the Europe against all migrants. And as we all know, COVID-19, as you mentioned in your introductory speech, adds on to the factors causing people to flee their homes, such as extreme poverty, hunger, and lack of social services. And we are at the risk of facing new migration waves from not just Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, and Pakistan. Therefore, nobody can expect us to shoulder another migration crisis. As our president mentioned last March, I'm afraid we have no more room to accommodate any more migrants. Physically, we are full. And we have far, as I said, exceeded in our capacity. So we must ensure fair burden and responsibility sharing, not just for the EU. I'm just addressing for international community, especially UN should and must lead. And closing the borders, I'm afraid, is not a remedy. And so you cannot stop asylum seekers coming to Europe just closing their borders. In the first place, we must address the root causes triggering people to leave their homes. To this end, we should help source countries to overcome the political and social and also economic hardship to achieve these sustainable results. And Mr. Kilic, I'd like to also share that the number of pushed back asylum seekers and migrants from Greece to Turkey, I'm afraid, still alarming. The Frontex, I mean, if you look at the Frontex approach, I don't want to go in details. I think now the EU has on the investigation of these activities. I'm sure that Mrs. Ferran will give us some more information. And in the last 3 years, more than 76,000 irregular migrants were pushed back to Turkey from just Greece. And this is a clear violation of the human rights obligations of the EU and Greece regarding these asylum seekers. And we are waiting for international community to put an end to these illegal practices. And it is obvious that we need more strong, durable solutions for these Syrian refugees. And actually, there are, having said that, three, if you like, main strong solutions might be. One is voluntary repatriation. Second is local integration. And last one is resettlement. And regarding resettlement, figures for resettled Syrians are disappointing. In fact, resettlement figures are very low globally, not just around Turkey. And within this framework, Turkey believes that the most durable solutions for Syrians is their safe, dignified, and voluntary returns of their lovely, sweet homes, countries. And this is also the view of the UNHCR. And they repeatedly, on several platforms, they repeat this. And safe returns also, safe returns are also the wish of the Syrians themselves. Most of them want to return their homeland when the circumstances allow. And however, it should not be that, it should be noted that global migration cannot be managed by a single country, and so requires comprehensive cooperation. But when we mean that comprehensive cooperation, just financial support is just the remedy or the panacea for all this.
Mr. Afşarata, maybe we can continue this the future perspective in the last part of the panel discussion. If you don't mind, may I continue with the second question to be able to steer the discussion in a structured way?
Yeah, I was just about to finish actually.
I apologize, please.
Yes, we have time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, of course, with this baseline information, of course, we have a better understanding on the situation of the migration situation in Turkey, not only about numbers, but also potential risks and also limitations that are observed by the authorities. Now, I want to continue asking my second question to Ms. Ferran. Of course, Turkey and EU have been cooperating last years through different programs, focusing on capacity building, extending cooperation at operational areas. And of course, with the 18th March 2016 agreement, the scope of cooperation have been extended, and the capacity of the institutions are strengthened, and also immediate needs of the Syrians who are in Turkey are, of course, satisfied. Now, would it be also possible for you to give us an overview about the existing cooperation framework between EU and Turkey, to have also kind of overview from your side to steer the discussions further?
Thank you, and let me, in my turn, thank ICMPD for organizing this panel and greet my dear friend Halil Afşarata, and thank him to share this panel with me. As you can see through our bilateral relation, the cooperation of the EU with Turkey on the migration front is a very solid and long-lasting cooperation. And you were mentioning its framework. You rightly indicated the right framework is really the 18th of March 2016 EU-Turkey statement, which sets the overall frame on our cooperation on many fronts. Let me also start by repeating the clear fact that the European Union does commend, I would say every day, the effort that Turkey is making in hosting the highest number of refugees in the world. And it's something which is really well known and extremely appreciated. And this is the backbone, the background of our very strong cooperation. I can say that 4 years after, the EU-Turkey statement still delivers and is implemented in good faith by both sides. And it encompasses several elements, the core of it being migration management. As you clearly indicated, the EU is trying to support in the best way it can the migration management and border management exercised by Turkish authorities. And for that, we do have specific financial and technical support to the institutions in charge of border management. This goes from a direct grant to the Directorate-General for Migration Management through provision of specific equipment. We have provided search and rescue boats or other elements of equipment. This also is centered around very strong support to the refugee population, of course, supports the Turkish authorities in their effort to cater for the situation of refugees. And for this, we have created the Facility for Refugees and in Turkey, which is a financial cooperation mechanism which allows the European Union and all its member states to financially contribute to supporting the refugees in Turkey in all the basic elements of livelihood. We have very well ongoing programs that address more than 1.7 million refugees to address their most basic needs. And this is what we call the European Social Safety Net, implemented, of course, together with the Turkish authorities for the benefit of the refugees. We provide a lot of support in the education front, helping the real objective being to avoid a lost generation. And for this, the EU is contributed to financing provision of teaching and providing support, be it infrastructure or provision of professors, teachers, all the equipment of schools in complement always of the efforts made by the Turkish government. We support provision of health services, of protection. So this is really a huge program worth 6 billion euros overall in the direct support to refugees and host communities. We also collaborate, of course, in managing the flows, and we set up a system of exchange of information, of liaison officers between the Greek islands and Turkey. And all of this, I can say, is the basis of a very strong and ongoing cooperation. We, of course, also offered assistance in the face of the COVID crisis. As you both mentioned, this COVID crisis is felt even more by the most vulnerable populations and the refugees in the first place. So for that, we also redirected together in agreement with the Turkish authorities specific funding from this facility to particularly cater the immediate needs stemming from the COVID crisis. So, but the overall framework remains the EU-Turkey deal from 2016, which we consider is a solid basis that continues delivering results. And this was really one of the main objectives of this deal, was to save lives at sea. And this deal was broken at a time where you had more 10,000 people a day reaching the coasts of the Greek island, and many of them drowning in the Mediterranean. Of course, we cannot prevent all incidents, but this cooperation is really instrumental in saving lives, avoiding people endangering their own life by engaging into a crossing which will not bring them to the place they expect, and addressing the root causes of migration, as Halil was saying. Thank you. I think I can stop.
Thank you a lot, Ms. Ferran, for this overview. Of course, you well explained the overview of the existing cooperation frameworks. I want to come back to Mr. Afşarata. In your first intervention, you well explained the situation in Turkey when it comes to needs of also fight against illegal migration, return, and also durable solutions for Syrians. And of course, needs of Turkey is arising because of the COVID. You have been leading designing of the FEED program in Turkey, as well as coordinating among national institutions, and also coordinating implementation of the projects by international community. So based on your observation, do we have enough mechanism in place when it comes to EU-Turkey migration cooperation that can satisfy the needs of Turkey? Are they really sufficient? Mr. Afşarata. So if you can unmute your microphone, please. Sorry, we don't hear you. Technical.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kilic. Yes, it's also a good approach, this question. But before answering that, let me just quick comment on Mrs. Ferran's word. Of course, she mentioned in all sectoral areas, and I don't want to repeat, we are receiving the support of the EU on all sectors, and also there is no doubt that the Freed Funds is the largest and also fastest humanitarian intervention of the EU history. Many times they say, at least we agree, but the main problem is, yes, there is a tools, there is a fund. The main problem is we cannot mobilize on time. That is actually the problem. So, having said that, we are working, of course, to make it more together fast. We will discuss them later. Coming back to your questions, of course, the 18 March agreement is important, as my colleague Mrs. Ferran mentioned, and as we have shared through several platforms, until now, it is vital to ensure support of the international community, not just the EU, on this migration issues. And Freed is just a small but important part of this agreement. But it is vital to implement the 18 March agreement in its entirety to enhance our cooperation with the EU. When we say its entirety, we refer to progress on our accession negotiations and starting the modernization of customs union and support our efforts on visa liberalization, and also, among others, close cooperation in counter-terrorism, and also the cooperation on management of irregular migrations. So Turkey sees the statement as a fundamental document for re-energizing Turkey and EU relations, but as I said, that should be implemented as a whole. And since the entry into force of this statement, the current level of crossings has reduced by 92% last year, as I mentioned in my first round. And so it is a very important figure. And we believe that in the last 3 years, our efforts have generated a deterrent effect on millions of irregular migrants to reach the EU. And also, within this framework of this agreement, statement, we have taken back more than 2,000 irregular migrants from the islands, and 26,000 Syrians were resettled in the EU. And the efforts of Turkey should be acknowledged by taking into account the current irregular migrant influx, as well as the difficulties of being a host country. And while assuming a heavy burden, we also expect the EU to fulfill her commitments emanating from this statement. And actually, another point I would like to share with you is, it seems the EU is planning to change or revise her approach towards migration, and to do that, the EU Pact on Migration and Asylum has been made public in September, and it is one of the core subjects of your conference all the week, Mr. Kilic. So it is an important point to focus on. As European Union President, Vice President Shinas points out, the pact can be seen as a building with 3 floors, namely an external dimension, which refers to strengthening partnership with the countries of origin and the transit, transit and robust management of external borders. And last one is the firm but fair internal rules. But however, the last week, the article has been published in Brookings Institute's website by Turkish Professor Erdoğan, who is devoted most of his time to this migrant issue. I'm sure you know him very well. In this article, they said that this pact on migration and asylum is missing a true foundation. That is what they claim, which I also support them. There are few concerns pertaining to the pact that need to be addressed. To begin with, they claim the pact requires a fundamental basement by realizing that the majority of the world's refugees are being hosted in developing countries today. This is very important. And if EU wishes to adopt a binding guideline, the pact must not be a mere document only just aiming to superficially protect the EU borders. So the pact should be shaped in a way to decrease the burden of transit countries located in the main migratory roads towards Europe and of course including Turkey. So Turkey remains as the main channel for migrants and asylum seekers wanting to reach Europe, I'm afraid. So if Turkey's unique position, Mr. Kilic, in the Eastern Mediterranean road and Aegean is not taken into consideration, it will surely lead to failure of the pact. So we expect to need a migration policy to focus on ways to address root causes triggering irregular migration and support Turkey's return policy of the Syrians. And also, it is important for the EU to align its policy ideas with global initiatives, such as the Global Compact of Refugees. You remember last year it has taken, and our president also the co-chair together with other colleagues. So we do give an importance of this initiative. And again, as Mr. Erdogan, his colleagues mentions in the article, this compact on refugees has an objective to promote economic opportunities, decent work, job creation, and entrepreneurship programs for hosting community members and refugees like Turkey. And actually, this is what Mrs. Ferran just mentioned. The FREED actually partly covers all those arguments mentioned in this compact on refugees. So we should maybe focus on, together with this pact, must be aligned with this compact, global compact on refugees. Okay. And finally, sir, I'm just closing.
Okay,
last sentence.
sorry.
GCR also mentions that prospects of innovative solutions, such as active involvement of the private sector to support the refugees with decent and sustainable job opportunities. Again, what we are trying to do on the FREED projects. And these are just small examples how these two efforts can be aligned. And in summary, we believe that bringing its migration policies closer to this GCR, the EU may achieve a global perspective, not just the local one, and draw advantage from the cumulated global efforts in the field of migration management. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Afşarata, for this very, very extensive answer. Sorry for the time pressure that I am indicating to you. I really apologize for that. But my colleagues kindly agreed to extend the session 15 minutes more, so we have a bit more relaxed time. Now, in your interventions, you covered mainly your observation on the implementation of FREED program, but also you extended the intervention to also make references on the implication of EU migration pact. Ms. Ferran, I would like to ask the questions to you in two rounds as we had planned already. So in this maybe round, may I invite you to share your observations on efficiency of the FREED program, because you have been leading this also. You are a frequent visitor of Turkey, thanks to your very close relation with the authorities. So you have a very good understanding. In this round, may I invite you to share how the existing FREED program could be could become more efficient, considering the views of Turkish authorities, to be able to increase the impact. And in the next round, I will be inviting you to talk about migration pact more.
Thank you. Mr. Afşarata basically quoted me saying that we do consider that the Facility for Refugees is the EU program that has been implemented the swiftest and with the more impact. Of course, I understand the frustration from the Turkish side that you cannot implement, this is not a blank check. And the way we have decided to implement the FREED is via projects. And the speed of implementation of project is utterly dependent of its nature. So for us, we have some programs which are implemented every day, and I'm mentioning the cash programs, when it's a question of giving a certain monthly amount to refugees. This is spent every month, and the money is flowing into the pockets of the refugees on the monthly basis. So for us, this is what is meant by very swift implementation, and this has been the case over the last 4 years without interruption. Of course, if you look at the big number, not all the money has been spent already now, because we are still aiming at covering the next year period, and this money will be spent on a monthly basis. When you're building a hospital, and the FREED is supporting the building of 2 hospitals in Kilic and Hatay, of course, you know as well as I do that building a hospital takes time, from building the foundations to setting up the building and furbishing it. So we have different speed time depending on the nature of the project. All the monthly salaries, be it for nurses, doctors, teachers, are paid on a monthly basis. When it's a question of procuring equipment, it's also done very quickly. When you're building infrastructure, as any such project, it takes more time. But I do believe that the implementation is going very well. Of course, some contracts are more difficult than others to negotiate. And we have many contracts also implemented by external partners like international financial institutions. And this needs, of course, to follow the requirements of the EU financial regulation. So not everything can be spent in one day. But our assessment is that implementation is going on extremely well and according to schedule. And so far, we have more than 100 projects running on the ground. And if we want to use big figures, even though I'm not a big fan of big figures, because the reality are in the small spending that benefit the refugees on a daily basis. But if we want to go for that, we have actually disbursed 4 billion out of the 6 in 4 years. And what is not spent is because the operations are ongoing, as I mentioned. What remains to be spent is because the hospitals are in the process of being built and will only be paid when they will be finished. So in terms of assessment, we are really positive, but I also want to stress the very good cooperation we're having with the Turkish authorities in the implementation of this program. And we have different ways of implementing, where some go through the direct support to Turkish ministries, this to support sustainability and having the refugees follow the same systems. And if we're talking about access to school, education, we want to have the refugee population integrated in the mainstream with the Turkish population, so that to avoid any differences and ensure the sustainability of the program. Others are like constructions are implemented by international financial institutions. But all in all, I'm extremely positive. And if I may, a side remark, always on the EU-Turkey statement, also to answer one remark from Mr. Afşarata, we fully recognize that the EU-Turkey statement is not only about migration. The EU-Turkey statement was really aiming at reinvigorating the EU-Turkey political agreement in all fields. And you're completely right in mentioning that there are other provisions in the EU-Turkey statement, be it continuation and acceleration of the accession negotiation process, modernizing the customs union, opening up visa liberalization. The only difference of approach we're having from the Commission perspective and the Turkish one is that all those elements were conditional upon progress on the EU agenda. And unfortunately, the political situation in Turkey over the last years has been what we call, between brackets, backsliding, much more than showing progress, in particular on the essential elements of rule of law and democratic credentials. So we absolutely acknowledge that the EU-Turkey statement is wider than cooperation on migration. Unfortunately, all the conditions that were attached to progress on the other fronts have so far not been met by the Turkish government. Would there be progress on those fields, we would, subject to agreement by EU member states, of course, we would be more than happy to move forward on any other front. But so far, the political situation is what it is, and certainly not conducive to those conditions being met. Thank you.
Thank you also for this extensive intervention, not only referring to the current migration-focused cooperation, but also the overall political context. I want to remain focused on the implementation of FREED program and also assessing the needs when it comes to maybe potential further steps of cooperation on migration matters. Mr. Afşarata, you have been, of course, leading the FREED program in Turkey, and you are well aware that migration will remain a dominating topic not only for EU but also for Turkey, because Turkey is becoming also a destination country. New needs are arising for, as you have well explained, the durable solutions. The cooperation has to be extended, and also it has to be done in a different manner. Also considering the overall framework of the 18 March that you have also made several times good references. So considering the ongoing talks with EU authorities, when it comes to your perspective, would you please share with us what type of expectations you have when it comes to designing of the new programs or extending of the FREED program? So what could be the ideal scenario for you, which can frame the cooperation that can satisfy the needs of Turkey?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Kilic. Of course, again, before I answer your questions, let me just comment on Ms. Ferran's last speech. I agree that, of course, we have a good relations, my office and also Ms. Ferran's office in Brussels, on the management of the FREED funds. And maybe it's one of the best practices between EU Turkey institutions. And of course, also the migrants force us to work efficiently because they are on the ground, 5 million, looking for our immediate aid and intervention. So, but the point is the financial regulation, of course, as Mrs. Ferran mentioned, they have to follow some rules and regulations. Yes, there is no doubt about that. We respect the rules and regulations, but the point is there is the approach difference. The rules and regulations the EU follows to implementation of the EU fund is the existing financial regulations which prepared for the IPA funds, means Instrument for Pre-Accession funds. As you know, Turkey is also a candidate country. So these are prepared for the development purposes. But unlike these FREED funds is humanitarian purposes funds. So you must act swiftly, quickly, and on time. That is the point we cannot agree, Ms. Ferran's office, I'm afraid. So I respect them. They have to follow the rules and regulations. So there must be something to the upper level anyway. So this, coming back to the questions, implementation of the FRIT funds, and the nation also our expectations. Of course, no one has been planning for this crisis to last 10 years. So we just opened our borders in 2011 with our president's instruction that we hosted. And now it became prolonged crisis, if you like. So of course we expect from Europe to approach in more positive way, especially just make some waiver. We not expecting to change all the regulations, financial regulations for FRIT funds, but at least they could do something to make easy for FRIT funds to implement a kind of some expectation of the waivers, etc. So and also, Mr. Kilic, last 10 years, our internal spending has been exceeded over 40 billion euros anyway from our internal sources. So, of course, we have our own problems, we have our own policies. So it is not the Turkey's financial problem. It is the international community, especially being the immediate neighbor of EU. So, of course, we expect more funds. I'm sure they are working on that one. I don't want to mention anything. But now our priority is to swift the faster implementation of the existing funds. So now, until now, there is a 6 billion of FRIT funds. Now half of them has been spent. And so these are being used or implemented by some of them by the public institutions directly granted, and some of them by IFIs, international organizations, INGOs, and I'm happy to inform that the ICMPD also among them. And so with this opportunity, ICMPD implements as a being implementing agency on one of the sectors, the socio-economic sectors, and carrying out the projects on socio-economic sectors. So having given his experience on migration in Turkey, now we have a successful project with ICMPD. And now, in summary, half of the fund has been spent. And as we shared the Commission and the Member States in our last meeting last week, there was a steering committee. And I just want to quickly mention a couple of points, especially for all participants in the panel to know them. Sorry for repeats for the Mrs. Ferran. So we increase needs with COVID-19. So this Vienna Migration Conference main concept is how COVID-19 changed everything. That's the main concept of this week. But I'm afraid the FRIT fund hasn't changed anything in terms of COVID-19 extra financing. And as we may all remember, a need assessment study for COVID-19 has been conducted for the second tranche of 2018, and the amount was 5.6 billion. And after that, for the COVID-19 again, upon EU's demand last March, we conducted another need assessment, and we end up nearly extra 1 billion euro. But total need is now 6.6 billion for the second tranche, but we receive just 3 billion, and excluding administrative cost expenditure, in net, we receive, if you like, 2.5 billion, unlike there is a need agreed by the both sides, 6.6 billion. Another there are still unsigned agreements from the COVID second tranche. Oh yes, we have time at the end of this year, but there is a tendency that EU always waiting until the deadline. We shouldn't wait until the deadline. But this is a humanitarian issue. It's not the development fund. We do appreciate if they just accelerate. And also, most important point, Mr. Kilic, is, yes, I'm about rounding up. We must take in decision-making mechanism. As Turkey, we are not, yes, we have a good cooperation with Ms. Ferran's office in Brussels, but we are just acting as a facilitator, helping them. But in terms of decision-making, we have no say anything. So somehow we must also change. Officially, we have, we are not in the decision-making. So, and also, last point before I close this section, the problems with the intermediary institutions. Of course, putting aside the ICMPD, I'm afraid there is no single Turkish, if you like, pillar-assessed institution. That's why none of the Turkish institutions, NGOs, cannot accept any fund. So they have to pour the all international intermediate institutions. Well, it's great problems because many of them has no experience operating in Turkey. That is another reason why there is a slow implementation of the fund. Anyway, now this is my part for this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Afşarata. Sorry for the time. As you know, that there is a very common term in the project implementation language, no cost extension. I got no cost extension 15 minutes, but that's also over. Ms. Ferran, my last question, if you can wrap it up in 2-3 minutes, if you tolerate. There was a reference to EU Migration Pact, and it's important for EU, this external dimension. What is your vision when it comes to extending cooperation with Turkey in coming years?
So, well, we mentioned already the migration part. Of course, it will be the new Bible from the EU side, and the external dimension of it is fundamental. But when you look at the details, my assessment would be that a very wide part of this new EU migration part has already been implemented in our relationship with Turkey over the last year. So my sense would be that, be it international partnership, we can have a question of label, but we do have the statement is a partnership with Turkey. On substance, the key elements of the pact are addressed in our cooperation with Turkey. So I would see it as maybe a new start, but some fundamentals of what the EU Pact for Migration will be is being implemented on a daily basis with Turkey. And I think we have a joint interest, a common interest, the European Union and Turkey, to continue with such cooperation. Then, of course, don't ask me the $1 billion question, how much is the EU ready to contribute further in the coming years? There is not yet any answer. What I can tell you is that the EU is very committed to supporting the refugees in Turkey, and that beyond and above the 6 billion euros, the EU already provided more than 500 additional million this year to make sure that the ongoing programs, and these are humanitarian funds, so the ones that Mr. Afşarata prefers because they're implemented directly. But we have already additional 500 million ongoing to make sure that the cash programs continue until end of next year. But in terms of prospect, of course, we cannot, and this is also one of the key elements of the statement, we cannot look at only migration separated from the rest. And what we are very eager now is to have a strategic discussion at the highest level within the EU and with Turkey on the state of play of our strategic cooperation overall, of which migration is, of course, one important, but not the only part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferran. I need to conclude the session. I will apologize. I was not able to summarize but it was very, very extensive session, fruitful discussion we had. But once again, it underlined that there is a confirmed strategic partnership between EU and Turkey on migration issues, and there is a good understanding of both sides, and there is a willingness for both sides to extend this cooperation, not only in Turkey along the migration route, not only in Turkey starting with country of origins. I think EU Migration Pact will also further promote this partnership, and both sides will, of course, do their best to satisfy the commitments. Of course, not only Turkey, all the countries in the region should do their best to meet the international standards and, of course, also implement their commitments. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists and once again apologize for the time pressure. It was quite reachful, therefore I didn't want to intervene. I want to also thank all the participants being with us. 10 minutes later, we will continue with another session focusing on EU new talent partnership. Please stay connected and enjoy the rest of the Vienna Migration Conference.